On the eve of the wedding, I went to pick up the wedding dress, but an explicit intimate photo of my fiancé with his white moonlight popped up on his car screen. In an attempt to clear his name, he accidentally pushed me down, causing me to hit my head and bleed profusely. Seeing me smile with blood all over my face, he and his arriving mother-in-law were completely stunned. They did not know that the life of that white moonlight was firmly in my grasp. Now, the game had begun, and their entire family would pay the price for their actions at this moment. After being legally married to Julian for 2 years, I only then discovered that he harbored an untouchable woman in his heart. It was not me. It was on the night before our grand wedding that I found out. He was driving, taking me to the bridal shop to pick up the gown I would wear the next day, when suddenly an image message popped up on the car screen. It came from a contact marked as V. The photo was extremely explicit. Julian, who was supposed to be supervising a project at the branch office, was lowering his head to kiss a girl with a pale face but a smug smile. The location was that private sanatorium he had mentioned in passing. Despite the lighting being as soft as if filtered, I immediately recognized the cherished gaze in his eyes toward that girl, crushed and almost overflowing. It was a look I had never possessed. The sender was one of Julian's group of brothers. Thus, this was a visit that everyone knew about except for me, his nominal fiancé and the bride-to-be for tomorrow's ceremony. Half an hour ago, he had messaged me, "Claire, it's cold outside, put on an extra coat, I'll be home soon." It turned out that home could be anywhere. Staring at that photo, my blood seemed to freeze instantly. No matter how high the heater in the car was set, it could not warm me. Julian suddenly slammed on the brakes, swerving the steering wheel, and the screeching friction shattered the silence. He unbuckled his seatbelt and frantically unplugged the data cable, causing the screen to go dark. He turned back to look at me, a crack appearing in his usual calm demeanor. "A friend, gravely ill, everyone went to see her." He did not even bother to fabricate a more believable lie. "Friend?" I softly repeated the word, as if tasting a bitter pill. "A friend who needs mouth-to-mouth medication?" He furrowed his brows, his tone revealing impatience and irritation after being exposed. "Claire, can you stop being so suspicious? Her name is Vanessa, my boss's daughter, she's dying." I was just comforting her. Comfort? The force with which he gripped the back of her head in the photo did not resemble comforting a dying person. I suddenly recalled the billion-dollar collaboration between the G family and the Sue family. So that was at my marriage, his love, neither interfering with the other. I suddenly felt nauseous. It was physiological, my stomach churning violently. "Stop the car." My voice was cold, devoid of emotion. "We're almost at the bridal shop, stop fussing." His tone began to carry reproach. I said nothing more, directly reaching to open the car door. The car had not fully stopped, but he knew I was capable of it. "You're crazy," he growled lowly, abruptly pulling the car over, grabbing my wrist with alarming force. "Claire, do you have to make this so ugly? The wedding is tomorrow." "Yes, the wedding is tomorrow." He was not afraid of hurting me, but of me ruining his wedding, ruining his perfect day of having it all. I looked at him, asking word by word, "Julian, who is she?" The sanatorium was located on the most secluded mountain in the city, with strict security. It was said that the residents here were affluent patients who could not be exposed to the public. Using my identity as Julian's fiancé, I entered effortlessly. "Claire, you've arrived." The front desk manager clearly recognized me, her smile professional yet distant. "Julian came particularly early today, he's accompanying Miss Vanessa in his exclusive suite." Exclusive suite. So, he had a long-term foothold here. Concealed by the dance floor? No, there was no dance floor here at all. Only deathly silent corridors and tightly closed doors. Hidden behind them were hearts 100 times dirtier than those in a bar. I found that room, the door slightly ajar, as if deliberately waiting for someone. Suppressed gasps and the girl's delicate moans emanated from inside. The sounds were not loud, yet they pierced my eardrums like countless needles. Julian, you said you'd wait until we were married. Vanessa's voice carried a sobbing tone, yet it exuded an alluring charm. Then came Julian's low, hoarse voice, filled with desire and a hint of suppressed pain. Vanessa, do you know how long I've waited? Facing Claire's cold face every day is like fulfilling a mandatory contract. Do you know what torment that is for me? When I touch her, I feel like I'm betraying you. You're the purest, I don't want you tainted by the filth of a business marriage. Wait for me, once this project ends, I'll confront her. My complete, purest love will be for you alone. My heart felt as if gripped tightly by an invisible hand, crushed to pieces. He said being with me was torment, a filthy business contract. Whereas Vanessa was pure white paper. So, he used protection in bed with me not because he didn't want children, but simply because he thought I was dirty. Touching me was a betrayal of Vanessa. With trembling hands, I took out my spare phone from my bag and activated the recording function. Then I pulled out the latest smartwatch Julian had given me, supposedly to monitor heart rate and sleep quality. He had coaxed me, saying it was to care for my health at all times. I removed it and, during a lull in their passion inside, quietly slipped it through the door crack, letting it fall onto the thick carpet. I did not need to capture those indecent scenes, I only wanted to record the most hurtful words he uttered himself. As I turned to leave, my steps faltered, nearly causing me to fall on the cold marble floor. Exiting the sanatorium's gate, the early morning wind made me shiver all over. I bought a pack of cigarettes and a lighter at a 24-hour convenience store. I did not smoke, but tonight, I desperately needed something spicy to burn my lungs and keep me alert. The smoke choked me to tears, yet I stubbornly finished an entire cigarette. After coughing violently, I dialed a number. Charles, lend me your legal team. My brother on the other end did not hesitate, his voice steady and firm. Did Julian bully you? My tears finally burst forth at that moment. I too had family, a brother who loved me. Julian was a bastard. Why should I torture myself with his mistakes? Not bullying, I wiped away my tears, my voice becoming unusually calm. It's that I don't want him anymore. Good. The lawyers are on standby. If you want to come home, just tell me, the door is always open for you. Charles paused, then transferred a large sum to me, password as usual. Claire, go buy something you like first, don't wrong yourself. Money had never been the source of my grievances. But at that moment, my family's support ignited a fire in my cold world. Hanging up, I extinguished the cigarette butt. The next day, I slept until the sun was high. Without Julian's disturbances, this sleep was particularly deep. Upon waking, my phone had countless missed calls and messages from the wedding planning team and Julian, asking why I hadn't gone for makeup. I could not be bothered to respond. Barefoot, I went downstairs. The living room was piled with wedding decorations and gift boxes. Among them was a huge box, exquisitely packaged, yet not from any sponsor. I approached it, there was a card on top, with elegant handwriting carrying a hint of morbid ethereality. Julian, thank you for preparing the wedding room in advance. I love it here and can accompany you every day from now on. Vanessa. Inside the box was a brand new home ventilator. I laughed in anger. This was a direct declaration of war. She not only wanted Julian's person but also my house, my life, my everything. Sending this item symbolizing her frailty yet essential for her survival to our wedding room was both a boast and a warning. Boasting Julian's affection for her to the extent of treating the wedding room as her sanatorium. Warning me that she was the rightful future mistress of this home who needed care. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Through the video doorbell, I saw Julian's anxious and angry face. I did not open the door. Instead, I calmly went over, dragged the brand new ventilator along with its exquisite packaging box to the villa's courtyard. Then I picked up the phone and called the property management of the villa area. Hello, there's a pile of medical waste someone discarded in my courtyard, please send someone to clean it up. The instant I hung up, a massive banging came from the door. Julian had evidently used the spare key. He rushed in, spotting the mess in the courtyard at once, his face turning ashen instantly. "Claire! Are you insane?" He roared at me, his eyes bloodshot, unsure if from a hangover or excessive indulgence. I leaned against the living room bar, leisurely pouring myself a glass of water. "Your stuff, handle it yourself, don't dirty my place." He reacted as if hearing the biggest joke. "My stuff? This is Vanessa's. I specially had it brought back from Germany for her. How dare you throw it away like garbage?" He charged over, grabbing my wrist with force, nearly crushing my bones. At that very moment, I played the recording exported from the watch last night at the sanatorium entrance on speaker. His low hoarse gasps, his accusations against me, his affectionate confessions to Vanessa echoed word for word throughout the living room. Facing Claire's cold face every day is like fulfilling a mandatory contract. My complete, purest love will be for you alone. Julian's face turned from ashen to deathly pale. He looked at me in disbelief, releasing his hand, true panic appearing in his eyes for the first time. You followed me?" Julian's voice tightened, evidently, his first reaction was not guilt but anger at his privacy being invaded. "If you don't want others to know, don't do it." I turned off the recording, put the phone back in my pocket, my gaze calm and unruffled. "Julian, the wedding is cancelled. We're done." "I disagree." He blurted out without thinking. Looking at him, I suddenly found this person incredibly strange and ridiculous. Last night he was professing love for Vanessa to the bone, willing to give her the world, yet now clinging desperately to me. Why? Julian took a deep breath, as if trying hard to compose himself. He stepped forward, attempting to take my hand. "Claire, listen to my explanation." That was synthesized. "Someone is trying to harm me. Vanessa is she's just like a sister to me, we're innocent." Did he even believe his own words? He actually denied everything to protect Vanessa. The man I once thought mature, steady, and polite revealed such a shameless face after shedding his disguise. I dodged his hand, retreating a step in disgust. "Don't touch me, I feel dirty." These 3 words seemed to enrage him completely. The last shred of pretense on his face could no longer hold, his gaze turned sinister. "Claire, don't be ungrateful. Think about what canceling today's wedding means for the Ching and Ji families. The collaboration is signing tomorrow. What will happen to the stocks? Are you going to ruin everyone's efforts over this trivial matter?" It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned the collaboration. Once he did, the fire in my heart was fully ignited. "So, in your heart, Claire, am just a tool to ensure the smooth signing of the collaboration?" I stared into his eyes. "Your so-called love, your so-called marriage, it's all a transaction, right?" He was rendered speechless by my question, his lips moving but no words emerging. In a fit of shame and rage, he suddenly kicked the ventilator box in the courtyard, roaring. I said, "I have nothing to do with her. How long are you going to make a fuss?" His kick was immensely forceful, the box tumbled toward me. I instinctively dodged, but my foot caught on the red carpet laid for the wedding, causing me to fall backward. My head struck heavily on the sharp corner of the marble coffee table in the living room. A loud bang. Instantly, the world spun, and a warm liquid flowed from my forehead, blurring my vision. I saw Julian's expression shift from fury to shock, finally to irrepressible panic. "Claire?" He rushed over, trying to help me. I raised my hand to stop him. Supporting myself on the table, I shakily stood up. Blood from my forehead slid down my cheeks, dripping onto my white nightgown like hastily blooming blood-red roses. "Julian," I looked at his terrified face and smiled, my voice as cold as ice. "Now, do you think this wedding can still proceed?" Julian was completely panicked. Seeing my blood-covered face, he took out his phone to call emergency services, repeatedly muttering, "Claire, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, No need." I interrupted him, my voice devoid of emotion. "When you laid hands on me, you should have anticipated this consequence." The calmer I was, the more terrified he became. The Claire who would anxiously tear up if he accidentally cut his finger was gone. Standing before him now was a strange, cold woman. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. "What do you want?" As I said, I wiped the blood from my cheek with the back of my hand, leaving a horrifying red streak. "The wedding is cancelled, we're divorcing." "Impossible." He refused again, but this time the reason was more blatant. "Claire, you can't be so selfish. Do you know how much I've invested in this wedding, in this collaboration? You say cancel and it's cancelled, what do you take me for?" I laughed out loud. He had the audacity to call me selfish. Who was it that promised a future with another woman in our wedding room? Who, for another woman's health, personally pushed his fiancé toward a sharp table corner? "Julian, I'm giving you one last chance." I retracted my smile, enunciating each word. "Sign the divorce agreement, I take what's mine, and you and your beloved Vanessa can live happily ever after. Otherwise..." I did not finish. Because the doorbell rang again. This time, the video showed a face I did not want to see: my mother-in-law, Julian's mother, Lillian. She was evidently here for the wedding matters. Julian saw his mother's face on the screen, his expression worsening. He lowered his voice to warn me, "Claire, don't drag this to my mom, it won't benefit you." I ignored him and went straight to open the door. Lillian was dressed in an expensive custom gown, her makeup impeccable. Seeing me like this, she first froze, then her face showed undisguised disgust and contempt. "Early in the morning, what drama are you performing now? Trying to scare whom?" She did not even glance at the wound on my forehead, striding past me to Julian. "Julian, time is almost up, hurry and prepare. The Sue family's heiress is still waiting in the lounge to greet guests with you." I froze in place. Vanessa? She was attending our wedding too? In what capacity? Julian's good sister, or the future Mrs. Julian? Lillian seemed to say it deliberately for me to hear. She held Julian's hand, speaking earnestly. "I know you're aggrieved, but Vanessa is in poor health, and her father has only this one daughter. Everything in the Sue family will be yours eventually. Your wedding with Claire is just a formality to appease the Ching family. Men prioritize career, you understand." So, they knew everything. Not just Julian's friends, but his family too, tacitly approved Vanessa's existence. They had jointly built a perfect cage for me. My marriage, my love, from beginning to end, was a meticulously planned scam to annex the Sue family's assets. Julian did not refute, his silence was the best answer. Looking at this mother-son pair, I suddenly felt the wound on my forehead did not hurt at all. The truly fatal wound was in my heart. I slowly walked over, picked up my phone, and in the group my brother Charles had set up with core members of both families, sent a message. "I, Claire, hereby announce that my wedding with Julian is permanently cancelled." Then, I sent the recording along with a selfie of my bloodied head. My parents' calls and my brother's came in simultaneously. Julian watched the constant pop-ups on my phone screen, completely dumbfounded. He did not expect me to be so ruthless, laying all the filth bare before the elders of both families. "Claire! You're crazy!" He lunged to grab my phone. I was prepared and sidestepped. Lillian was also stunned speechless by my actions. She pointed at me, her finger trembling. You vicious woman. Do you want to destroy our G family?" "It's not me who destroyed the G family," I looked at them coldly. "It's your greed and shamelessness." In front of them, I answered my brother Charles's call and put it on speaker. "Claire, how are you? Is the injury serious? Send me the address, I'll bring people over immediately." Charles's voice was furious, even through the phone, one could sense his murderous intent. "Bro, I'm fine," my voice was unusually calm. "You don't need to do anything now. Just have the legal team release this recording publicly to all financial media and our partners. I've even thought of the title G Group president cheats before marriage, shocking scam hidden behind the alliance. Also, prepare a lawsuit for me. I want a divorce, and I want Julian to leave with nothing." On the other end, Julian and Lillian's faces could no longer be described as merely ugly. Listening to my clear and methodical arrangements, their eyes filled with shock and fear. In their eyes, I had always been that docile, obedient fool who loved Julian enough to abandon all my overseas careers. They had never seen me like this, calm, decisive, even ruthless. Claire. Lillian was so angry her lips turned purple. You dare. Believe me, I'll make sure you can't stay in Rome City. We'll see. I replied with 4 words. The Ching family might have shallow roots in Rome City, but dealing with a disgraced G group on the verge of financial collapse was more than sufficient. I hung up and gave Julian one last look. He stood there dazed, lips murmuring as if he had much to say but could not utter a word. Regret? Unwillingness? Anger? All mixed on his handsome yet distorted face. I never intended to hurt you. He finally squeezed out a sentence, his voice dry. But everything you've done is pushing me into the abyss. I could not be bothered to waste more words on him. Turning, I walked upstairs step by step. I needed to change out of this blood-stained nightgown and take my documents. I wanted nothing here anymore. Nor this person. At the staircase turn, I stopped, turned back, and gave the despondent Julian downstairs a smile brilliant to the point of eerie. Right, Julian. I forgot to tell you, I extended my finger, lightly tapping my temple. The patent for the latest German heart pacemaker technology that saves your beloved Vanessa's life is in my hands. Originally, I planned to give it to you as a wedding gift to curry favor with the Sue family. Tell me, if I withdraw investment now and sue the Sue family's hospital for patent infringement, I tilted my head, the blood on my face making my smile even more terrifying. How much longer can her heart beat? Julian and Lillian froze completely in place. My words were harsher, more poisonous than a slap. It was pulling the rug out, turning Julian's proud love into the final straw, crushing his family. Vanessa's life hung on my whim. I no longer glanced at them, turning upstairs. My steps unhurried, the gazes behind fearful or venomous could no longer harm me in the slightest. I did not pack those designer clothes and bags. These items supplied regularly by Julian like contract terms now seemed foul-smelling. I only took my computer, documents, and a few external hard drives. What they contained were my true trump cards, unrelated to this marriage. Julian finally snapped out of his shock. Like a raging beast, he charged up the stairs in a few steps, blocking my room door. This time, his eyes held no anger, only utter panic and a nearly humble plea. All his calm and composure crumbled before the 4 words, Vanessa will die. He mentioned neither the wedding nor our relationship. With a trembling voice, he hoarsely asked, What do you want? Claire, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Shares in G Group, this house, all my real estate, as long as you don't touch that patent, okay? Looking at him, I suddenly felt immense pity. You see, I said softly, my voice carrying a hint of compassion, even now, you kneel and beg me, still for another woman. I stepped forward, brushing past him. His arm suddenly grabbed me, with such force as if wanting to crush me into the wall. I did not struggle, just turned my head, leaning close to his ear, stating a fact he had never cared about in a voice only we could hear. Julian, that heart pacemaker patent was conquered by the research team I led over 4 years. It was my gift to you, the chip I, Claire, gave you when marrying down to annex the Sue family and secure your footing in G Group. You thought you married a vase, in fact, you nearly possessed my entire arsenal. But you didn't want it. I paused, feeling his body stiffen instantly. You personally handed me the knife. His hand loosened bit by bit. His eyes filled with disbelief and a belated fear. He began to scrutinize me, as if seeing me for the first time. At that moment, the villa's front door was violently burst open from outside. My brother Charles, with 2 black-clad bodyguards, stormed in like a descending deity. He spotted the coagulated blood on my forehead at once, his eyes instantly turning blood red. Take him down. The 2 bodyguards hesitated not at all, stepping forward to flank and hoist the despondent Julian. Bro, I called to him, not here. It's dirty. Charles took a deep breath, removed his suit jacket, draped it over me, held me tightly in his arms, and led me out of this festively decorated yet slaughterhouse-like wedding room. Julian was clumsily thrown to the ground by the bodyguards. He looked up at my departing back, roaring, Claire. I did not turn back. Long after the car left the villa area, I received Julian's message, just one sentence filled with bloody despair. The sanatorium called, Vanessa is in heart failure. The news spread like a plague overnight throughout Rome City's upper echelons. The Jiqing alliance collapsed, the wedding turned into a farce, G Group president's scandal of cheating and scheming exploded, stocks plunged at opening, heading straight to the limit down. My brother Charles's legal team was astonishingly efficient. Lawsuit letters and evidence copies were delivered immediately to all relevant media and G Group's board. Julian was overwhelmed. On one side, the company's catastrophic disaster, on the other, Vanessa lying in ICU awaiting death. And the instigator of all this, me, was comfortably lying in my own villa bed, with the private doctor having just treated my wound. Not serious, just looked frightening. Charles sat by my bed with a bowl of porridge, brows furrowed. Claire, Julian has gone mad, he's pulled all strings to see you. I blew on the porridge and the spoon, saying leisurely, let him pull. The more people he seeks, the more favors he owes. It's most interesting when he's exhausted all his connections. My phone rang timely, an unknown number. I answered and put it on speaker. Vanessa's weak yet venomous voice came through. Claire, you vicious woman. You think you've won? Julian loves me. He's just temporarily bewitched by you. Even if you get his body, you won't get his heart. I laughed upon hearing. On the brink of death, still reciting these elementary school lines of romance. Vanessa, I said indifferently, in my eyes, Julian isn't even worth a dog now. I find him dirty and can't be bothered. As for you, I'm calling now just to inform you of one thing. I opened my tablet and projected a video call onto the room's wall. In the video was Julian, cornered in an underground garage by several burly men, his former business rivals, now kicking him while he's down. He was beaten black and blue, utterly wretched. Vanessa's breathing quickened on the phone. What did you do to him? I did nothing. It's his own consequence of betrayal and isolation. Vanessa, don't you love him? Tell me, lying in bed unable to do anything, watching him trampled into the mud for your life, losing all dignity. Isn't this feeling of powerlessness particularly great? Ah. Vanessa let out a piercing scream on the phone, followed by chaotic rescue sounds. The call was hung up. I put down the phone and continued drinking porridge. I not only wanted them to suffer, I wanted them to know exactly why they were suffering so. In the afternoon, Julian finally broke through layers of obstacles and reached the Qing Group building downstairs. He wanted to come up. The front desk girl, instructed, smiled professionally yet cruelly. Sorry, Mr. Julian. Claire has ordered that pets are not allowed in our company. Under everyone's gaze, Julian's face instantly turned liver red. The publicly humiliated Julian did not leave. He adopted the oldest and most foolish method, standing guard outside the Qing building. The next day, a drizzling autumn rain fell. He still stood there, his expensive suit soaked and clinging, hair disheveled, no longer the spirited figure of old. He looked just like an abandoned stray dog. I sat in the top-floor office, indifferently overlooking that tiny figure below through the huge floor-to-ceiling window. Charles entered, draping a coat over me. Still watching? Don't dirty your eyes. I've called security to drive him away. No need, I shook my head. Bro, let him stand. Every extra minute he stands now makes tomorrow's media headlines more sensational. Julian's resilience exceeded my imagination. He stood in the rain the entire day, until lights began to glow, his whole body swaying. I finally had him brought up. When he entered my office, water dripped from him everywhere, lips purple from cold, yet his eyes shone remarkably, as if grasping a lifeline. Claire. As he spoke, his voice was hoarsely unrecognizable. I did not let him finish, merely raising my hand to indicate the document on the desk. This is the divorce agreement. And, I took out another document, pushing it before him, an authorization letter. Once you sign, tomorrow I can authorize the patent to the German hospital and arrange Vanessa's transfer for surgery. He nearly pounced, picking up the authorization, hope igniting in his eyes instantly. But upon seeing the additional terms below, the color drained from his face. "Kneel." I softly uttered 2 words. He jerked his head up to look at me, pupils contracting. I leaned back in the boss chair, posture lazy yet dominant. "What, don't understand? Julian, if you want to save her, fine. Now, right here, kneel before me." His body trembled violently, fingers gripping the document tightly, knuckles whitening from force. Dignity, a man's last and most vulnerable possession, was being torn apart by my own hands. The room was deathly silent. After a long while, I heard a thud. Julian's knees buckled, heavily kneeling on the cold hard floor. He hung his head, I could not see his expression, only raindrops falling from his hair tips, smashing onto the ground, spreading small dark stains. Like tears. "Claire, I beg you." Kneeling before me, the once lofty man now humbled to dust, save Vanessa. I looked down at him from above. How ridiculous. He kneels, he begs, every word still for that woman. My heart held no pleasure, only a desolate indifference. I stood up, took the 2 documents from the desk, walked to him, squatted down to eye level. "Your kneeling is worthless." I slapped the divorce agreement on his face. "Julian, I've changed my mind. I don't just want you to kneel. I want you and your dear mother Lillian to hold a press conference together tomorrow." His gaze tightened abruptly. "I want you, in front of all national media," I curled my lips in a cruel smile, "to reenact this kneeling scene. You, personally admit to infidelity in marriage, scheming to deceive in marriage, intentional injury. Then, Lillian, publicly apologize to me for every dirty word she said. Do this, and Vanessa has a sliver of hope." I trampled his dignity underfoot, then grounded harshly. My conditions exploded like a bomb in the G family. Lillian cursed me over the phone, from vicious woman to slut, words unbearable. But in the end, it turned to horse pleas. She could not apologize, nor let her son kneel before the nation. That was worse than death for them. But Julian agreed. Faced with family survival and Vanessa's life, he chose the latter. This might be the only act in his life fitting his devoted persona. It was this costly devotion that suddenly raised a doubt in me. Were things too smooth? Was Vanessa really just a sleeping beauty innocently awaiting her prince's rescue in bed? While the mother-son duo was in chaos, I had my brother Charles use some special connections to investigate something: the private sanatorium's all surveillance that day, and Vanessa's complete communication records over the years. The evidence was soon before me. Julian had been deceived. I nearly was too. On the wedding eve, that provocative photo was indeed posted on Facebook by Julian's brother. But that post was set visible only to me. And the one who instigated him was Vanessa. Surveillance showed that 1 minute before the brother messaged me, Vanessa in her ward used her phone to message him, make it more intimate, then send only to Claire. She was no fragile white lotus at all. She was a lurking, calculating venomous snake. She understood Julian's guilt, and my pride even more. She calculated that I would verify due to this photo, that I'd collapse upon seeing the truth, and that my personality would inevitably erupt on the wedding day. Her goal was not silent waiting at all. It was to destroy the wedding by detonating me, making the guilt-ridden Julian completely break with the Ching family, thus fully ensnaring him alone. The delivered ventilator was a demonstration. Her line about brother saying living outside is inconvenient was even more heart-stabbing. From the beginning, she had treated me as prey. I had an even heavier discovery: Vanessa's attending physician had massive financial dealings with Vanessa's father over the years. Vanessa's illness was real, but the severity was greatly exaggerated. The so-called heart failure was just their joint ploy to squeeze Julian's last bit of value. I anonymously mailed a printed copy of the data to Julian, confined at home and confronting Lillian. The rest was for him to figure out. Loving someone, is it loving her essence, or the pure, flawless illusion in one's imagination? The press conference was ultimately held. But only Julian appeared. He looked more haggard than days before, dark circles under his eyes, yet his gaze held a deathly calm. Presumably, he had seen what I sent him. Facing countless flashing lenses and reporters' sharp questions, he did not defend himself at all. He did not even do as I said. He did not kneel. Instead, standing on stage, he picked up the microphone and recounted the entire matter in detail. From how he got entangled with Vanessa due to guilt, to how the G family used the marriage to scheme, to how he injured me. Finally, he presented the evidence I sent him. All this started because of me. It was my stupidity, blinded by greed and so-called love, that hurt the most important person in my life. From today, I resign from all positions in G Group in atonement. What the G family owes Miss Ching, I will repay with everything I have. After speaking, he bowed deeply to the cameras. This bow was harsher than kneeling. He nailed himself, the entire G family, including the Vanessa he desperately protected, to the pillar of shame. Personally tearing off the mask called devotion, revealing the selfish, foolish, pitiful clown inside. My brother Charles beside me scoffed, at least he has some backbone. I said nothing. I received a message from the person I sent to the hospital. Simultaneously with Julian's conference, Vanessa staged a wrist-slitting suicide in her ward, timely discovered and saved by her doctor. She was still acting. Pity, the only audience no longer wanted to watch. Julian disappeared after the conference. Lillian, unable to bear the blow, suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. The vast G Group, leaderless, teetered on collapse. It became a juicy piece on my brother Charles's chopping board, awaiting his knife at any time. Everything was within my plan. Even better than expected. 3 days after the conference, my legal team formally sued the G and Sue families for malicious commercial fraud, intentional injury, and reputational damage, among other charges. As for that patent, I personally called Vanessa's father, Victor. Victor, do you want to save your daughter's life? I asked lightly. Dead silence on the other end. Exchange it with all shares of Sue Medical in your hands. Once the equity transfer agreement is signed, I'll grant the authorization. Your daughter's life is in your hands now, think carefully. After saying that, I hung up directly. I won't let her die, that would be too easy on her. I want her alive, witnessing her family ruined by her stupidity, watching herself fall from lofty heiress to a penniless ordinary person. Let her spend the rest of her life paying for her schemes. Half a year later. Rong City's business world had undergone drastic changes. The former G Group was fully annexed by the Ching family, renamed Qingqi Technology, with me personally as CEO. The Su family became a medical subsidiary under Ching Holdings. Vanessa was sent to Germany. The surgery was successful, but only in preserving her life. Her latter half would be spent in ordinary wards and endless medications. I left her away to live, yet cut off all her retreats. As for Julian, he vanished like evaporated, never appearing again. That day, I had just finished an international video conference, exiting the airport's VIP channel, preparing to board the car home. A familiar yet strange figure blocked my path. It was Julian. He had slimmed down a lot, skin tanned bronze, with a neat buzz cut, wearing the simplest white t-shirt and jeans. No trace of his former elite aura remained. His eyes lacked the initial hostility and scheming, left only with a calm polished by time. We stood a few steps apart, quietly gazing at each other. The airport hall bustled with people and noise, yet between us was silence as if another world. Ultimately, he spoke first, voice somewhat dry. I have been doing charity in the West, just returned. It seemed like an explanation, or self-muttering. That's good. I nodded, polite yet distant. He seemed unprepared for this reaction, stunned, then bitterly smiling. I heard, you're managing the company very well. Much better than me. We conversed awkwardly like this, all insignificant chit-chat. Until my car slowly arrived, I prepared to leave. Claire. He suddenly called, stepping forward. I stopped, turned back to look at him. The sunset's afterglow through the airport's glass curtain wall gilded him in gold, evoking a sense of another lifetime. He looked at me, eyes reddening, asking that question perhaps pent up long in his heart, yet most meaningless. If there was no Vanessa, no messy schemes, back then, did you really think of living a good life with me forever? I looked at him, this man I once loved wholeheartedly, later hated to the bone. Today, the hatred had dissipated, leaving only endless pallor and indifference. I did not answer directly. Instead, looking at the surging crowd behind him in the airport, I softly countered, "And you? Julian, before meeting me, did you ever imagine what your arsenal looked like?" After saying that, I did not wait for his answer, directly opening the car door and getting in. The car sped away. In the rearview mirror, his figure grew smaller, finally becoming a blurry disappearing completely. No ifs. My world once gave everything for him, nearly reduced to scorched earth. But now, my arsenal is fully upgraded. My journey is to the stars and seas. He is merely an insignificant inscription on the ruins.